Alright, hello everyone and welcome to NFL Discussion. I'm your host and NFL enthusiast Dougie Doug. In today's episode I'm going to be discussing Week 16 of the 2022 NFL season. And more specifically, I'm going to be talking about takeaways from the Saturday slate of games for Week 16. So, as we all know, it is Christmas Eve and then Sunday is Christmas Day. So, because of that, the NFL decided to split up split the action, have most of the games on Saturday, and then have a 3-game slate on Christmas Day, just like they did last week on Saturday, just like they did on Thanksgiving. I think the big theme for this week of football was the bitter cold that would grip several cities across the United States and impact several games come Week 16. Not in Minnesota, though. We have an indoor stadium. But it is cold outside of Minnesota, so it's probably good that we have an indoor stadium. In the early kickoff games, there wasn't just battles between ground attacks and frigid temperatures. The Kansas City Chiefs were able to cruise to victory thanks to Patrick Mahomes, who's been playing exceptional football per usual. He might not put up like flashy numbers all the time, but he is the franchise quarterback, and he is a big reason why that team is in the mix for the number 1 seed. Elsewhere, the Vikings finding ways to win like only the Vikings do. They might be flawed on defense, but this was certainly a complete team effort from them on Saturday. And with the results of the games all now in place, there's going to be at least 2 big-time battles for division crowns in the final 2 weeks. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get right into the takeaways, starting with the Vikings. So they might be destined for a deep playoff run. In consecutive weeks, they've won in dramatic fashion. Last week, it was overcoming a 33-point first-half deficit to beat the Colts in overtime, and this week it was topping the Giants with a game-winning 61-yard field goal and what was a seesaw battle of a game. So the final seconds of regulation, Greg Joseph would make what was a career-long field goal for him to give the Vikings a thrilling victory at home. Even though Joseph would make the play of the game, it was like the Vikings' heavily criticized defense and special teams units should also get some credit for their performance in this game as well. Minnesota was able to force 2 turnovers on its side of the field and block a punt that would set up the offense with a short field for a touchdown. That set up the offense with a short field, which then the offense would capitalize by scoring a touchdown. And those key plays helped the Vikings overcome the total yards advantage that was held by New York. Sure, Kirk Cousins threw for 3 touchdowns. T.J. Hawkinson caught 13 passes for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Justin Jefferson captured the team's receiving yards record for a single season with his own performance of 133 receiving yards and a touchdown. But Minnesota won this game against the Giants with solid play in all 3 phases of the game, already set to host at least 1 playoff game. The Vikings might be a team that could be a problem in the playoffs, and they might be primed for a deep playoff run of a shot to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Maybe not everybody buys into it, but I'll tell you what, they are undefeated in 1-score games, and they also show that they can overcome a deficit in that game against the Colts. So all I'm going to say about the Vikings is that they know how to win, and winning is the most important thing in the NFL. It doesn't have to be pretty, you just have to win. And you can sit there and say, oh, you don't win pretty, you're not going to be able to win when it matters. Sure, whatever, might be an argument there, but the way I see it, with the way the Vikings play, this is why they're a problem, because they just know how to win. Titans. So their loss sets up an NFC South title showdown with the Jaguars in Week 18. Doesn't matter what happens in Week 17. Week 18 is for all the marbles, if you will. So the Titans dropped their 5th consecutive game, losing at home to the Texans, who have the league's worst record, but certainly haven't played like it the past 3 weeks. Wonder where that energy was to start the season. Nonetheless, since Week 12, the Titans have been down bad. On top of that, they're probably going to finish out the season without their starting quarterback Ryan Tannehill, who underwent surgery on his ankle this week and is unlikely to return for the playoffs should the Titans make it, per ESPN's Adam Schefter. On Saturday, rookie third-rounder Malik Willis would step in and make his 3rd start of the season and went 14 of 23 passing for 99 yards and 2 interceptions. Also rushed for 43 yards and a touchdown for whatever it's worth. However, unlike Week 8, Willis couldn't manage the offense in a winning effort over the Texans. Instead, the first-year single caller would throw interceptions on the Titans' final 2 drives of the game to kind of close things out for the Texans. Looking ahead, the Titans have a tough matchup with the Cowboys on a short turnaround in Week 17, that being Thursday night. And then they'll play the Jaguars, who beat them in Week 14 for the division. As of right now, the Jaguars look like the better squad. They currently, because they won and the Titans lost this week, they're now the number 4 seed. They're in the driver's seat. Trevor Lawrence has a hot hand right now, winning 4. The Jaguars have also won 4 of their past 5 games. Lawrence also, I talked about that hot hand, throwing for 13 touchdowns and just 1 interception since Week 10. Tennessee has been the back-to-back division champ heading into the 2022 season, but Jacksonville has all of a sudden, late in the season, decided that they might want to change that they might want to be the division champions this season, which, hey, they win it, good on them. Brand new Jags. 49ers, they are the hottest team with their 3rd-string quarterback, Brock Purdy. So going into Week 17, 49ers have the league's longest win streak, which stands at 8 games. And conveniently, that 8-game win streak started when Christian McCaffrey took over in the lineup. I do believe. If I'm wrong, go ahead and correct me, but I believe since they traded for McCaffrey, they've won 8 games. Even more impressive, their starter, Jimmy Garoppolo, went down with an ankle injury in Week 13 against the Dolphins, but rookie 7th-round quarterback Brock Purdy has basically kept the ship afloat, if you will. He's kind of kept things steady, helping lead the 49ers to 4 consecutive wins by an average margin of about 17.3 points. Since Purdy took over for Garoppolo, he's thrown for 8 touchdowns, 2 in each of the previous 4 games, and 2 interceptions with a rushing score. The first-year single caller has completed at least 65.4% of his passes in all of those contests. Sure, Purdy has from a top 10 ground attack that's racked up at least 121 yards in 4 straight outings, and it's no defense that hasn't allowed more than 20 points in the game since Week 7. But all that being said, any team is bound to have some struggles with a backup quarterback, or at least that's typically what happens, let alone a 3rd stringer. But the 49ers haven't missed a step with Purdy and one of the NFL's most complete rosters. They're ready for postseason action. And, this team, when they win, they don't win in spite of Brock Purdy. They win with Brock Purdy, and I think that's the biggest thing they got going for them. Eagles. So, they lost, but, hey, shout out to Carter Minshew, man. This guy, he can still lead them to the NFC's number 1 seed. So, in a loss to the Cowboys, the Eagles came up short in a chance to clinch the number 1 seed, but Carter Minshew played well enough to give the team a shot to win. He went 24-40 passing for 355 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, losing a fumble and rushing for a touchdown. So, very eventful game for him. Yes, Minshew did make some mistakes with those turnovers, but it's not all on him. Yeah, look at that Eagles defense. They gave up 40 points, which is the most that they have allowed in a single game this season, which kind of like a bad timing to give up the most points you've ever given up in the season. So according to NFL Network and Rappaport, Jalen Hurts might be sitting out again next week because of a sprained shoulder. And if that is the case, Minshew showed in this game that he's capable of leading the Eagles to a win to get that number 1 seed, assuming he takes better care of the football. In the final 2 weeks of the season, the Eagles will host the Saints, who came into Saturday's games with the 22nd ranked scoring offense. They also got a win over the Browns and knocked them out of the playoffs, so I guess good on you, Saints, there, and kept themselves alive in the division race for whatever that's worth. And then they also faced the Giants to close out the season, whom they have already beaten back in Week 14. Well, beat them, victimized them, conquered them. Yeah, it was not pretty for the Giants. Regardless of the play of Minshew, Philadelphia, they can't allow opposing offenses to go up and down the field because that would put pressure on either a banged-up starting quarterback in Jalen Hurts or his backup, that being Minshew. So, Minshew got to take better care of the football, and the Eagles defense just got to get back to clamping down on the opposition. So, I still expect the Eagles to take the number 1 seed, but yeah, I think they'll be okay with Minshew holding down the fort. Looking at the playoff picture, I saw the Falcons and Browns have been officially eliminated from contention. Not surprising to see the Falcons, but I guess that does clear up the NFC South, or not AFC, NFC South division race a little bit. We know one team who won't be winning, and then the Browns. Well, it's not really that surprising. Even with Deshaun Watson coming back, they were below 500, so it was unlikely that he was going to come back and, help this team make a playoff rally. It just wasn't going to happen. But who knows what next season will bring for those two teams. Maybe a change in quarterback for Atlanta. Again, right, as for the Browns, I don't really expect anything to change. Expect it all to remain the same. And with that, so we'll go ahead and wrap up this discussion, this episode of NFL Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.